Something has bothered me about competitive Pokemon for a while. Why does status suck? Now, we kinda know why, because Game Freak hates it. Nerfing Confusion, nerfing Swagger, nerfing Thunder Wave, constant nerfs to Evasion, Blood Moon Ursaluna exists, all kinds of power creep. By the way, Gholdengo and Garganasalt just laugh at you. So, a lot of common Pokemon just kind of make the strategy invalid. But when you look at the most used Pokemon, like Urshifu does not want to get Thunder Wave. And there's still like some good looking options, but then it just kind of gets weirder and weirder for me with the power creep because we have Zapdos. Zapdos used to be seen as a wall. How do you get past a Pokemon that goes full invested with 90, 85, 90 on electric flying? So very few ways to hit it super. Not many of them are ideal except for ice. And it's also going to outspeed everything naturally, has some damage to back it up, and it's just going to like discharge you until your entire team is paralyzed, and then it can just heal off with a roost. But then I looked at Gholdengo, and Gholdengo is just a legendary Pokemon in disguise. 87, 95, 91, 90, 85, 90. But we're not seeing Gholdengo use Thunder Wave, which it has for some reason, to play like a Zapdos. Now, it does have some weaknesses, but Terra also kind of removing Pokemon's niches while creating different ones. But you can really just see the power creep right here, where like, oh, this Pokemon also is just immune to status moves while being Zapdos. Also, it can end the game instantly on a nasty plot, so it doesn't want to play the long status kind of game. And it really feels like the optimal way of playing Pokemon right now is that you have an Encore, and then you just have like 2 sweeping Pokemon. A lot of people picking the Urshifu because it naturally anti-tanks. Iron Defense Body Press is a really good way for a tank Pokemon to start sweeping. Urshifu goes, nah, get out of here. You're just punched down and your stats don't matter. Iron Bundle has weirdly vanished from Battle Stadium, and now it's just about the Blood Moon Ursaluna, which also just does too much damage. If your Pokemon is not Power Creep defense, like something like an Ogerpon, oh yeah, if you don't have 80 plus Power Creep defenses, Ursaluna just takes a hit. Like, not even Power Creep sweepers are doing enough damage to the Ursaluna, and then you get one shot by the move that just can't be immuned or dodged in any way. Really cool, Game Freak. And if you have the audacity to set up in any capacity, you know an Encore is coming. And that just removes an entire Pokemon from the game. But back to Thunder Wave, and the more I look at it, the more I just kind of see problems of either the Pokemon is outdated and power crept, or it just does other things better. Like King Gambit gets Thunder Wave. No one's playing Thunder Wave King Gambit because Metal Burst, that's a one-shot, and you're durable enough to kind of tank anything, even super effective hits. Or go Terra, take a boosted hit, and then just go and Metal Burst and win the game. Guillotine is a must-have on King Gambit, so it's like, oh man, Thunder Wave, Oko on the King Gambit play, but you don't have Sustain. So you're just better off, you know, taking out a Pokemon, trading, using Kowtow Cleave for the reliability, Sucker Punch crazy amounts of damage, and then Guillotine to anti-tank Pokemon. And then, like, as we talked about with Gholdengo, Dragonite is doing all kinds of weird stuff. Blissey, I mean, Urshifu exists, so Blissey can't. And Trashapult's one of the worst Pokemon in the game. Oh man, 142 speed. It really matters that you're cutting your opponent's speed with that Thunder Wave, huh? And then very low defenses by power creep standards, so I don't know. And then other Pokemon like, yeah, Regenerator Slowking kind of has like an interesting play around it. And we've seen some of it, so like maybe that's the only kind of option. Cresselia got power crept, 120, 110, 120, not good enough anymore. Also, Encore bait. Rotom, another Pokemon that got power crept, like 50, 107, 107. Used to not be able to do anything about it. Now, a Terra boosted move, and it's just gone. So Game Freak got their wish. They tried with Megas. They tried with Z-moves. They tried with Dynamax. But it really came down to Terastallization and also just giving all this power creep and tons of Pokemon Encore and Taunt to make it to where tanks are borderline unplayable. The most attempt we've seen with Thunder Wave is on Tinkaton, but that Pokemon just like terrible and never works anyways. So yeah, like that's desperation if you're trying to play a statusy kind of game. And I feel like it should be viable. It should be an alternative way to where like you just cripple your opponent's entire team and then you work your way through the battle. But then if you don't have anti-tank, Pokemon like Gliscor comes in now and you just lose the game. it's ground, so you can't even Thunder Wave it. But if you don't have like a way of two-shotting, it needs to be like a heavy two-shot onto the Glasgow because of the poison heal and sub. Like, if you can't break the sub, red bar it, and then finish it off, you just go down to a Toxic and that's it. Also, the only reliable way of taking this Pokemon out with Ice historically has been removed with Terastallization, so you just go Terra Water. Now the Electric that didn't even affect you is what you want to do, and Grass kind of isn't common either, and you still have to now use Glasgow's free turn, get through the sub or get through the protect, and then try to two-shot it again. So if you don't have like enough hyper natural offense to deal with the Glasgow, you just lose to that because you were playing slow status games. And Glasgow can slow that down to where it just wins. And Glasgow is a really good example as to why the optimal play now is hyper offense with Encore, because Glasgow could easily take over a game, but then it's like, no, you just switch something in and then you lock it out and it's not allowed to play Pokemon, and nothing wants to switch out of their Encore tank into whatever nastiness is coming. Like, okay, then Dragonite gets a Dragon Dance and it's kind of over. Or if it's not Specs Iron Bundle puts up a sub. Now Glasgow can't even Toxic it. And that's another thing, there's also sub. Everyone's running Substitute. So, like, technically Infiltrator exists, but not enough Pokemon actually get it to any meaningful degree. I do think Chandelure is the truth. I just haven't labbed it and built a team around it because I'm really comfortable with like my Hippo and my tank setup, and then balancing that out with the broken Fluttermane moveset I've made. So there could be something here, but like that's it. That is the extent to which it goes. But like I said, Iron Bundle has dropped off, so maybe there is an opening, but then Urshifu exists, so who even knows what you're supposed to do for Pokemon anymore, because the power creep has been that wild. And then there's some other status options, like we have Will-O-Wisp, so you can just remove a physical Pokemon from the game. Urshifu doesn't want to get Will-O-Wisp either, but then, yeah, that's a Fire-type move that's primarily used by Fire-type Pokemon, or Ghost-type Pokemon that just really aren't that viable anymore. And it is weird, because I predicted this before Pokemon Scarlet and Violet even came out, where the game's going to be too diverse to have any form of consistency, which kind of makes it easier for newer players in theory, because they can steal wins with like weird strats or terastallization. And we can see Smogon just completely crumbling from that, kind of like how they crumbled with Dynamax. But overall, it's also making it harder for new players, because then they just get run over by whatever diverse terastallization cheese someone's cooking up, or also just power creep you can't do anything about if you want to be an honest Timmy. So Arcanine just kind of always seems like it has an opportunity to do something, but it gets grinded down, and then, yeah, then a tank Pokemon comes in and you lose the game, because Arcanine just isn't that fast when a Pokemon's setting up Iron Defense Body Press. And I don't know if it's a proper development of the meta, or just further Psychosis on top of the Japanese schizophrenic anti-setup meta, where everything is running Encore, and it just seems like the worst moveset ever. Like, what are you going to do if your Ninetales just has no options because it's using up one of its slots on an Encore to shut down tank? Well, it turns out, like, yeah, instead of going Aurora Veil, the opponent sets up, you switch, the opponent sets up more, now it's like Encore, free switch, you still have enough Aurora Veil, and it's proper, even though, like, you are reducing your options throughout the game. But with how proficient and game-ending tank setup Pokemon are, like, this one move on one Pokemon that can kind of get its way into a battle just means, like, an entire playstyle is invalidated from 1/12 of your team. And because of that, playing other forms of status doesn't really seem that viable. So, like you'd have to add this somewhere into your team. Like, Taunt also as effective. There are situations where Taunt succeeds and Encore doesn't, but Encore is more that like mid-game where, oh, you tried to set up, I switch in, now you're forced to switch out, and then you have to just kind of deal for a while, or you don't get to set up, or you're locked in, and now like you're just completely removed. And I wonder how much of it is just the game being dead in the West, because it's like 98-2 Asian players to English players on the battle stadium. So if you had more English Timmies that at least had a little bit of skill and understand the game running balanced teams, it would be harder for this to succeed, because now you're losing that move slot. Now you could Encore something wrong because you're expecting, like, or the Japanese player Encore something wrong because they're just that schizophrenic anti-tanking. They'll always throw it out there. They will take no risk to lose the game to a setup, and then they get bopped. And then, like, again, that bulky, more balanced offense could do something to at least suppress this a bit and then diversify the meta. But now it's like, this is just peak. You're either going to win on setup, or you're going to win with an Encore on your team somewhere. So does Game Freak just hate status too much and tanking for it to be viable? But then they also make a Pokemon like Gholdengo, so I hate it. I've used ugly Pokemon. We went into Barbarical for the 6-0 sweeping back in Generation 6. That is as far as I'll go. I will never pick up Gholdengo, even though it like is the truth and it is the answer. There's also some other things coming up that are going to be interesting, because Alcremie will be in the DLC, and it has the Aroma Veil, which gets rid of all those problems. But also in the DLC, there's the Psychic move that cuts off healing, so that's going to get weird. And it's also just like the slow watching of power creep destroy everything I've loved in this game, because like Clefable used to get by. Even in Dynamax meta, you can get by with the 73-95, but now Ogerpon just says nah, like Keyberry doesn't even matter. Ogerpon goes slap slap and you're dead. And if you have the audacity to use status or disruption against a modern Pokemon, you're just going to get rolled. Now, we are going through Pokemon Showdown, which like defaults into the Smogon rules, so we can see a lot of banned Pokemon that aren't even restricted legendaries, but they're not doing any better. King Gambit every game. Great Tusk being the highest usage Pokemon we've ever seen, but also Gholdengo's insane. King Gambit. So like, they've made things worse. You go on the Battle Stadium, it feels like, oh man, there's no diversity, but Smogon has only created like a hyper non-diverse metagame. Because of all the power creep, you're only playing Whack-A-Mole, and you can't bring back to a more balanced state of old school Pokemon, where there were also just like mega threats and hyper stuff like that. So that's just kind of the nature of Pokemon, but unfortunately, this is what Game Freak wants. You can't be like, oh man, Game Freak ruined Pokemon, what are they thinking? If you just kind of like watch what's happened over the generations with making it to where you just can't throw a Clef Key out there and then 50-50 the game on a turn 1 swagger and then just potentially win off of that, they got their wish. The problem is it creates a lot of other ugly. Like that Pokemon just too big. There's too much going on with Pokemon, and there will always be ugly, but this is not the good kind of ugly where we're at right now, even though it's the ugly Game Freak wants. This was deliberate design. There's no accident when you make this, put it out into the world and go, oopsie doodle, it's a little too strong. Same thing with Ogerpon. Same thing with everything we've seen from Generation 9. So, like, they've got it, but it just doesn't make sense. Like, what needed to happen was nerfing all of, like, the already powerful Pokemon, bringing the new Pokemon power creep down, and then buffing older ones, and then just kind of, like, crunching everything in to where more is viable. But instead, it's like, yeah, actually, no, everything before Generation 8 kind of doesn't exist as a Pokemon, and you're just playing Hyper Rocket Tag power creep. Man, it just kind of keeps on showing, like, we need battle replays. No one wants to play Pokemon because they don't have anything to show for it, so it's dead in the West for that, like, gratification culture that we have. Battle replays will at least, like, open up some diverse play, open up some creativity, and then just kind of, like, have more people interested in Pokemon. We need Battle Revolution 2 or some kind of like major battle simulator with open rules. So we're like, if you only want Gen 1 Pokemon allowed, boom, you can do it. You can like create whatever like they do for the fun online tournaments that we see from time to time, like the Kanto Cup. Except it wasn't called the Kanto Cup, it was called the Kanto Classic. Either way, I don't know the exact way through this. I've been finding a lot of success through just my playstyle, but like, it's been ugly. It's been ugly since day one in Generation 9, and there's no way around the ugly because you're always just going to get bopped by something else. And like, damage theory has really helped accelerate through this mess and trying to understand Pokemon. So like, it's really good in a way of like, this adversity is making the players that want to try and want to get better at Pokemon just absolutely insane. And if there is like significant balance changes, or if Game Freak does care more about the competitive scene at all, it's not like, oh, they only balance for doubles. No, like, doubles is dead, there's too much cheating, everything's corrupt. There's not a lot of care for competitive Pokemon, and the last time we had that was like Pokemon Battle Revolution. It looks like the Indigo Disc is going to be like competitive Pokemon Light, but I don't see how that's going to like introduce enough to really be like, hey, competitive Pokemon's like mega supported and we're just doing great now. So it's going to need to take some like insane, deliberate dedication from Game Freak to make competitive Pokemon feel the way it did back in like Generation 6. But there's no like signs of that, and there's nothing to really support it, and that's why competitive Pokemon's pretty dead, and it's kind of ugly. But it's one of those things, like, if you stick around though, you are going to have the advantages, and that's what all these babies are crying about with VGC, where it's like, why do I have to get Pokemon Sword and Shield with the DLC? Well, one, because your entire community is filled with cheaters, so that's on them, not Game Freak, but also because if you are a real Pokemon fan and you've played through all the games and you've bought and supported the franchise, then you have a natural advantage, much like if you've been playing baseball since Little League in elementary school. You're going to have more than someone coming in late to the scene. So I see Generation 9 as a complete throwaway because it's so unbalanced, but it's a really good time to learn that if competitive Pokemon's taken seriously, we see like balance changes, maybe even like regular updates to balance, like once every 6 months with a Battle Revolution 2 would actually make Pokemon like the hottest esport once you ban all the cheaters and stuff. Like if you got caught cheating at World, Genie a lifetime ban, especially people like Wolf Glick. But like if something like that happens and there's actually integrity and balance to the scene and care for competitive Pokemon like we've never seen before, then like the amount of success you're going to have coming into that is going to be outrageous because you survived Generation 9. Honestly, that could be a shirt. I thought this would go like develop into something, but ended up being one of those classic Verlisify rambles that pops up from time to time. But I think that's all right. Just kind of getting an idea of where Pokemon is right now. But also, it could just change drastically here really quick because we have the DLC coming up. The new Nintendo Switch could also be like an entry point for more Pokemon stuff going on. So this could also just not apply if something really wacky develops with the Indigo Disc, but after seeing the different regulations and like Pokemon Home Transfer and Teal Mask and like new Pokemon coming in, and it just still being anti-tank meta is the most proper way of playing Pokemon, the more paranoid the better. And also no one in the West cares about Pokemon, so there's not going to be any like outside development or anything to kind of come in and try to at least make the game more diverse and more playable. So yeah, dead game. We've been saying that for a while, but well, maybe something develops and maybe someone finds something that'd be pretty cool, but then they can't share it because no Fan Fridays. Awesome. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.